I had been asked to mention, and I forgot at the beginning, that Shauna and Kevin just have asked that maybe the photographs that you take today wouldn't be shared on social media. They have an exclusive contract with Hello Magazine, I think, so or the Farmer's Journal, I'm not sure, one or other. But just maybe that whatever photographs you take, just for now, just keep them among yourselves. Is that right? Yeah. Start off with a little story that I've often tell at weddings, and I like it. A story of an American man going into a bar somewhere in the States, and in a very loud voice he calls the attention of the young barman. He says, "Bartender, serve me a bottle of your finest, most expensive champagne. I'm celebrating." The barman says, "Certainly, sir. Do you mind my asking, what are you celebrating today?" "I don't mind you asking." He said, "I'm happy to tell you. I'm celebrating 50 years of marriage." He said, "That's tremendous, sir. I don't think I've ever met anybody in my life that's been married for 50 years. That's a tremendous tribute to you and your wife, sir. Do you mind sharing with me what's the secret of a long marriage like that?" "I don't mind sharing with you. I'm happy to share with you. I'll share with anyone that asks. When I was 25 years married, I took my wife to Ireland. I'm going back for her tomorrow," he said. So needless to say, that's nothing to do with anything, and it's certainly not advice. Okay, I think a lot of quality time is missing. But thinking of the man celebrating 50 years of marriage, I'd like to, before I forget it, mention Father Martin here, who's celebrating 50 years of priesthood this year. So we congratulate him. And thinking of that celebrations and of anniversaries, a number of years ago, when I was in Ballyderreen, a priest came from Clare to do a wedding mass there, and he told a story that I've used since. I've told him I've used it, but it just struck a chord with me. It was a story about a couple who were celebrating, I think maybe their 40th, their Ruby wedding anniversary. And they had a celebration, a family celebration, maybe mass and a bit of a gathering. And that night they finished up back in the house on their own, the two of them. And the old man said to his wife, or the husband said to the wife, "Would you like a cup of tea?" And she said, "Yeah, why not?" So he went into the kitchen and he made a tea and a sandwich for her. He walked out and he handed it to her, and she took the sandwich and she looked at it and she says to him, "Why do you always give me the heel? We're 40 years married," she said. "You always give me the heel, and I hate the heel." And he said to her, "I give you the heel because it's my favourite part of the loaf." I think when the priest said that in Ballyderreen that day, it struck a chord with me, because my father, God rest him, always liked the heel of the loaf. The priest went on to say at the reception that day, somebody came up to him and said, "Godfather, doesn't it just go to show you, no matter what you do for them, you cannot make them happy?" he said. And the priest said that wasn't the point he was making. So thinking about it, what was the point he was making? To me, the point he was making, and that I took from it, was that sometimes in marriage you have to give away what you might most want to keep. Sometimes. And that's really what I'd like you to take from the Mass today. That willingness to, at times, in the interest of your marriage, in the interest of the love you have for each other, to be willing to give away what you might most want to keep. That might be a bit of time for yourself on occasion. Might be something you want to do that the other person isn't particularly interested in doing at that moment. So you just give it away in the interest of love and the interest of togetherness. As I was coming over in the car today from Tubber, I was just thinking about that, and in some ways that's what Jesus does in the gospel today. He gives away what he most wanted to keep. Mary turns to him and she says, "They have no wine." And he said to her, "Why turn to me? My hour hasn't come yet." He knows that once he does what he's about to do, his life won't be the same again. People are going to start drawing on him and pulling out of him and seeing him as someone who has miracles to work and wonders to perform. Somehow his identity goes from being the son of the carpenter, the son of Mary, to this wonder worker. And she said to him, they have no wine. And as I said, he said to her, why turn to me? My hour hasn't yet come. And then somehow he finds in himself the ability to give away maybe what he most wanted to keep. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do in the interest of that young couple. It was the right thing to do because his mother asked him. It was the right thing to do in the situation, and he did the right thing. And I think in marriage and in priesthood and any walk of life we're in, we find ourselves having to do that on occasions, just to give away in the interest of doing the right thing. And the story that Father Martin read for us in that gospel passage is probably one of the most read gospels at wedding masses. But rightly so and understandably so, because it situates Jesus in a place like we're in right now, with a Kevin and a Shauna who needed something, and he gave them what they needed. And I believe in my heart of hearts the same is happening today. Jesus is giving you what you need. I don't know you very well, Kevin. We've met on a few occasions. But to me, last weekend, you proved yourself to be a good and decent man as you stood quietly in the background and in the foreground when you're needed at Madge's funeral mass and around those days. And as I watched you, I thought, he's a good man. I said that to you during the week. There was just something about you that made me realize Shauna has made a good choice. The way you stood there, the way you walked into a house, just within days of your own wedding, when Shauna and yourself had so much planned and hoped for, and it was all turned on its head in the closing of eyes and the ending of a life, and the beginning, please God, of eternal life. And I don't say that to upset you, I say that to acknowledge you today. That I was, insofar as I could be proud of someone that I didn't know very well, I was proud of you. And I felt you did things well, as did all the family, but not least yourself and Shauna, who had to go from one emotion so quickly into another. And please God, back into the emotion again that is around today. So I believe that the Lord sees all that in you. If you reflect sometime on how you met, I don't know where it was. I don't ask people anymore where they meet or how they meet. Mentioned the Farmer's Journal one time. There was a great story in the Farmer's Journal of a small lad said, man with tractor seeks woman with trailer. Send picture of trailer. So I don't ask anymore how people meet, but somehow the two of you met to a degree that has led you here to Gertrude Church today. And that's a gift. There are many people who go through life and never receive that gift of meeting that other person that they can share their life with in a meaningful and in a loving way. So I want you before the altar today to be thankful for that gift, be thankful for that meeting, and to go back to it often. I sometimes find myself using a little tune at Mass, Raglan Road, that speaks of Patrick Kavanagh seeing a woman on the corner of Raglan Road in Dublin, and he felt he had no choice but to cross the road and speak to her. No choice. And it's a very courageous thing to do because you run the risk of rejection. You run the risk of people not wanting to know. So be thankful today that there was no rejection. Be thankful today that the desire to be introduced, the desire to get to know one another reached its fulfillment, and its absolute fulfillment is in where we are right now before the altar here in Gertrude Church with your family and friends behind you. And lastly, which I think is a word people love to hear me saying, lastly or finally, Jesus said to the servants, to the stewards, to the servants in the place, fill the jars with water. And they filled them to the brim. He didn't tell them to do that. He just said, fill the jars with water, but they filled them to the brim. And in filling them to the brim, it took longer and it was harder work, because we're told they could hold 50 or 60 gallons. They weren't light by any stretch of the imagination. So they'd have got away with half filling them, quarter filling them, maybe even three-quarter filling them. But filling them to the brim was the step beyond. But it made all the difference, because the more they put in, the more they received back. The more they put in, the more the Lord blessed and gave back to them. And that's the last thing I'd like to say to you today. Fill this marriage to the brim. To the brim with good humour, and I think you have that. To the brim with love, and I'm absolutely certain you have that. To the brim of knowing who your people are and that they have your backs, and you're definitely aware of that. So everything you have in you that's good today, fill it into this jar called marriage. Fill it to the brim, and I'm absolutely convinced the more you put in, the more you'll receive back. And that's my wish for you, and that's all our wishes for you this day and always.
They say love is luck, the right place and right time. Or maybe it's crossing paths on a night out in Galway that changes your life. And as time passed, you started to fall in love with Imperfectly Perfect and realize you're so fortunate. You began to see all the small things you never thought of before became the most important. You may be lucky enough to find your person when you weren't even looking, which quickly turns to conversations, if you do the cleaning, I'll do the cooking. Someone who finishes your sentences could almost tell what you're thinking. The person who collects you from the pub with a takeaway when you've been with your friends day drinking. It's knowing them so well, you tell their mood without a single word. The one you race home to tell them all the gossip from work. The person who quickly becomes your other half when you're trying to be mad at them, but they still make you laugh. It's patience, it's respect, it's support when you want to say you can't, but they say you can. It's the person who holds you when Mayo misses out on Sam. Watching the John Lewis ad, eyes filled and tears streaming, they won't make fun of you. They'll find it endearing. Meeting someone and having clarity and no more guessing games, actually considering one day you might share the same surname. A serendipitous meeting, 7 years all of a sudden. Before you knew it, you were collecting the keys for your new home in London. Life can be overwhelming and it can be so tough, but you two together will have more than enough. So when it's raining and it feels like the sun might never come through the clouds again, remember there's so much love and kindness in you both to move you beyond the pain. And that's significant and it's so rare, and how exciting to know there's more happy memories for you to share. Love is the ally, the key to happy ever after, and as someone special would say, that's your ratter.